Welcome, Thomas. Thank you for being here.
I mean, George, thank you so much for having me here. It's great. It's exciting.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I've absolutely loved our conversation out there for the last hour. So hopefully we can replicate it in here.
Yeah.
So you're in food and hospitality.
Yep.
And from what I've read and understood about you, you're already doing some fantastic things already. But what I love to always do is kind of understand the origin of where you started from.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously a lot of trials and tribulations along that journey. So, So could you tell me like where you were brought up and?
Yeah, of course. So I was brought up in Colchester in Essex. Was where I was born. Moved to Clacton. Grew up in Clacton-on-Sea, little seaside town. And yeah, that was basically where I stayed until I moved to London for the first time. Moved to London just as I turned 17, so I was going straight out of college. Just finished my exams for my last year of college and went straight into a 1 Michelin star restaurant in central London, and
wow.
it was
Considerably
definitely eye-opening.
Young.
Yeah, it was. I think at the time I was probably one of the youngest people that worked for the group. And then just decided to go on from there and do my own thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about in detail.
So what got you into food and hospitality? How did that start?
So for me, I've always loved food. Always loved cooking. Cooked at home with my mum. My grandparents had a fish and chip shop and sort of takeaway and restaurant down just off the beach, and food's always been a big part of life, big part of family. Sit down and have family dinners together, and it was always loved food. And I think that was the starting point. And I didn't really do well. I did alright at school, but I was a bit of a naughty boy. Didn't really like school. I got picked on quite a lot. As probably more so than the average person. Just didn't want to be at school. Didn't like it, and then realised I could leave school and go and cook and do that as full time.
So how old were you when you got into like?
So my first job was when I was still at school, I was literally 12, 13 years old when I worked in a pub washing up. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Peeling vegetables for Sunday carvery. I didn't have a rumbler, so I was peeling potatoes by hand, and it was, it's testing, but it's. That's in a beer cellar, freezing cold, peeling a couple of sacks of potatoes, and just washing up. And it weren't anything fancy food. It was just a pub restaurant that did a carvery on a Sunday.
Yeah, that's considerably young though, isn't it? Like to start working.
I was on like £3, £3.60, £3.80, I think it was. It was which is great. And I mean, when you work, it's like you're £3.80 is what your hourly wages. I was still at school, and then like some weeks I was doing like £105. I was in my absolute element.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of money for a 12, 13 year old.
Yeah, and you think and I did that for just over a year and a half, and it was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. And then just really ignited the passion and wanted to go further. Finished school, decided I wanted to go and be a chef, and that was what I wanted to do full time. I'd worked at another little hotel in between.
So what did you do? Did you move out at 17 to London on your own? Did you?
Moved to London by myself to the big wide world.
Wow, that's a massive step, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that?
So obviously didn't really have a massive amount of money to be able to go and afford to pay 8 weeks of deposits to live in London, but it's London prices. So I actually ended up moving with a friend of mine that I'd actually met through a really sort of hard and sort of hard period in my life, if you like. So when we were all at school, one of the lads that we used to play rugby and go to school with was really quite a close-knit circle of friends. He went to a house party one day. Someone tried to take his drink. He weren't having none of it because he was always that big, boisterous. And this kid turned around and stabbed him, and he died.
You're a good friend of yours.
Yeah, and it was a hard thing to deal with. Do you know what I mean? I didn't really know how to process it, and I don't think I did process it until a few years later. But I ended up meeting this guy called Shane, and he was just such a nice, welcoming sort of person. You know, he did a lot of charity work and did a lot of sort of fundraising for the charity that his parents set up in his memory. And he said I can come and stay with him like when I moved to London. So
Oh wow.
so I went and stayed with him, and I was with him for about 7 weeks while I was trying to, you know, like find my feet, get somewhere to live, find somewhere to rent. And yeah, he was a real helping hand for me to, especially when I first moved to London. To, you know, you don't know anyone. It's
100%.
It's massive. Like you're going into a very big, scary place, and yeah, it was yeah. And we're still friends to this day. Do you know what I mean? We still,
that's brilliant.
Still hang out, still see each other every now and then. But yeah, that was my sort of first experience of London, which was quite nice.
Well, it's lucky you had someone like him to kind of show you the road, like show you around and make sure you had a bit of a tour guide in the area.
100%. I mean, he was absolutely brilliant. Like, you know, he showed me like the area, introduced me to his circle of friends, and, you know, like made some friends straight from the off. And yeah, that was really nice. And being in the industry, you meet so many people. Do you know what I mean? Like working in restaurants and stuff, and some people you click with, some people you don't.
Yeah.
But it's a very, like, you end up seeing the people you work with more than you do your own families. Do you know what I mean? So they almost become like a second family to you. So it is like a really close knit industry to work in.
So you got into working at quite a prestigious restaurant at like 17 years old.
I basically, I'd always been a fan of Jason Atherton. He was literally like one of my biggest food heroes of like what he was doing with food and just how he was as a chef, and like his sort of story of what he wanted to do and how he'd opened his restaurant. And yeah, I always wanted to work for him straight from college, and that was it. So I applied relentlessly to get a job, and I went up just for one day, did a trial, didn't hear nothing for 2 weeks, and I thought, oh, that's it. I think I'm pants, and I ain't gonna be coming back. And then I got a phone call the week afterwards to say we'd like to offer you the job at Little Social across the road, and and that was where I started.
Right. And what was it like working at a place like this? Because I imagine
it was incredible. I'll be honest with you. It was so eye-opening, like just to the world of food, like the world of produce, and the ingredients we were prepping just on a daily basis, and the things we got to sort of taste as we were going along, and different produce, and learning how to cook with the seasons, learning the best way to cook like fish and vegetables, and it just everything from start to finish was just a real eye-opening experience. I mean, it had its good parts and its bad parts.
Yeah. I'm sure.
But it was,
because of the contrast, like, of where you were back at home and what you used to do back then. I can imagine it was a big eye opener. And what were the people like to work with?
Do you know what? Most of them amazing, like absolutely amazing. Most of them I still speak to this day. Some of them even work for me. Like they were really good. Like, there's a few that, you know, like I think it was a bit of a hang up from me. Like, I used to take things quite personally when people used to be like, you know, like call you names and be horrible and try and single you out and stuff. And at the end of the day, like, I was there to learn. I was there to progress and understand my own sort of skill set, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve. And it was quite hard, you know. It's almost like getting a little knockback when someone wants to call you fat or be horrible, or do you know what I mean? Obviously, there's a few other things that we probably shouldn't say on a podcast that we've said, but you get the idea. And it just, you know, it was a hard learning experience. It was a really hard learning experience for me, because
a culture shock.
Yeah, very much so. I'd been around people that were sort of similar age to me, like a few years older, that were going out partying, like, and would come into work like hungover, and, you know, you'd help them on their section, and it was very simple, or a lot more simplistic food than what we were doing in like one of the best restaurants in London. And as I said, I was there to learn, and I think at times I sort of, you know, like there were days I'd go home crying, like, because it was horrible, like absolutely horrible. But it makes you resilient. Like, every day I used to come to work with a smile on my face, because I knew that I was there for a purpose. Do you know what I mean? I knew that there was a greater good, there was a bigger picture to paint, if you like, and develop further.
Is that what you generally found kept you going? That your purpose to learn, to grow, like, you were 17 years old, and it was probably one of the best opportunities you could have ever got.
100%.
At 17 years old.
100%. Like, the opportunity couldn't have been like any greater for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was working with one of the best chefs in the world. And yeah, by the time I left working for him, I'd seen most of his London openings. I'd been and like covered like on day shifts and stuff in different restaurants for him and things like that. And like I'd help like do like dishes and make elements for him to plate up for his book and things like that. So it was always like there was so much that I took away from it that I'll treasure forever. But yeah, like there were days where, you know, it gets to the point and you're just like, actually, why am I standing for this?
Yeah.
And I remember one day we like this one guy. He always used to give me a hard time, pick on me and things like that. And it was always let slide by the exec chef because he was always like, he'd worked together 15 years. They'd known each other for like longer than that. Do you know what I mean? And he carried on just pushing me one day. And I squared off with him in the kitchen. And
so what, it just kind of kicked off?
Yeah, and he was just like, you know, what are you going to do about it? I was like, all right, we'll go outside and we'll sort it out. And middle of service, I mean, I don't condone it, but middle of service, like, and so the two restaurants are literally opposite each other down the same street. And it's got floor-to-ceiling glass in one restaurant, and you can see all the diners. And we're just in the middle of the street getting ready to have a ruck.
Really, yeah.
Like the general manager comes out, breaks you up, and like it's just, you know.
The thing is, though, like, you are there to learn, you are there to grow, but you shouldn't stand for being treated a certain type of way. We were saying this earlier about respect should be reciprocated. It shouldn't be like you're just respecting them and they're not giving it back. So, like, fuck them, you got to stand your ground.
100%.
And that was... It was like you know, picking your moments, like picking your battles. So, and obviously at this point you've picked enough battles and you thought, no, I've had enough now.
Yeah.
And
legit. And it was, you know, it got me in a bit of trouble. You know, like HR didn't get involved because it's a very sort of corporate world. It's very structured, and you know, like it's not the behaviour that's acceptable or condonable. But you know, at the same time, if you're going to get pushed to that point and no one's going to listen when you say like, look, this is happening and you're not doing anything about it. You've also got to stand there and fight for what you believe is right within your own like moral compass and what you'll accept from people. Because if you go through life and you're being pushed from pillar to post and you're accepting it, like you're never going to break that cycle because you don't know any different.
Well, you got to have respect for yourself as well, right? Like, if you don't respect yourself, how do you expect other
100%.
people to do the same? And I think that was a moment where you were just saying, no, like, I'm going to respect myself and stand up to this guy. And he obviously didn't like it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not.
Which is, you know, good. Like, at the end of the day, that was the right thing to do. So what happened? So after this HR...
Yeah, so I sort of said to him, I was like, look, like I didn't want to be in this restaurant to start with. Like, I wanted to work at the restaurant across the road. It was always the dream. I applied to go and work there. I'd done trial shifts in other restaurants, like for the group around London.
So they was all owned by the same person?
Yeah, so all owned by the same group. And I just said, I was like, this is where I wanted to be. And they're like, oh, right. And I was like, well, the reason it hasn't happened is because the exec chef at the time didn't want to lose me, because if you lose staff, especially someone that's been there over a year, they know like pretty much every section in the kitchen. They know what they've got to do when they come in the morning, and you can rely on people. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much hate you have for someone, if you dislike someone, or you can be horrible to them. But at the end, if they turn up and they know what they're doing and they'll come into work every day and get on with it, that person's invaluable to you. Do you know what I mean? So you're never going to want to lose them. So, and it was a HR decision to move me from that restaurant to the one across the road. And
so they did retain you then in same group of companies.
So I stayed working with a group, but just moved restaurants and you know, continued on that journey to
was the grass greener or
no, to be honest it wasn't.
No, wasn't it?
The grass is green on the other side is bullshit.
Yeah. But if you don't try these things, you don't know.
Of course not, but at the same time it was still, you know, that there was still those odd people in there that had an instant dislike because you were younger than them, or because you like saw more of an interest in wanting to learn and progress quicker than they did. At the time, I'd moved by that point, and I was living at Russell Square, which, as you know, is extremely central to central London, and we were working just off Regent Street, which is like a 20-minute walk. And these people were having to get like an hour and a half bus at the end of the day to go home.
From home,
and it's horrible, especially if you can get the tube, great, but we always used to try and rush to clean down just so people could make the tube and stuff, and so they didn't have to sit on buses. But as I said, like, I was a 20-minute walk up the road, and some people didn't even like that because they were like, oh, you know, how can you afford to do that? And I'm like, because I went out and found someone that was.
And was this with your mates?
No, so this was someone else that I'd found and moved sort of closer into London.
Yeah, fair play.
And it was just on a whim. It was someone else that I knew that had sort of passed me a contact, and that was it. And yeah, it was still expensive. I mean, at the time I was probably doing 1,400 quid a month is what I was being paid, like, and then my rent every month was 800 quid.
Yeah, yes.
Like, and it's like, okay, well then you've got to, you know, pay for your phone bill. You've got to pay for food shopping. You've got to pay for like day-to-day bills and stuff. If you need to go and get a prescription, you've got to pay for that. Do you know what I mean? It's all those things that you don't consider.
So what were the hours like for a place like this?
When I was like, it's probably not like that now. I don't think many places are, but I mean, when I was there, like someone left and they didn't have anyone to cover, so it was very much 20-hour days, 6 days a week, like to cover other people being off and things like that. But even when you weren't doing
hours.
6 days a week, you were still there 19, 20-hour days. Like, it was still. I mean, I'd leave mine at 3:30 in the morning. I'd get to work at 4 o'clock or just thereabouts. I'd have a cup of coffee. I'd look at me prep. That's what I needed to do for the day. I'd help put the delivery away, and a delivery coming in for a restaurant that does 400 covers a day is pretty substantial. Do you know what I mean? You got to check to make sure everything's there that you need, and if it isn't there, you've got to write it down and give it to someone, and they've got to phone the supplier and say, you know, you haven't delivered me this. Can we get a second delivery?
Lots of coordinating.
Yeah, there's lots of moving parts to it. And then once you've done that, you then start your prep.
Right, yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? And then you're starting, and then so by now you're probably 6 o'clock, and then you're like, okay, I need to start doing prep now, and then we're open at 12, so you've got 6 solid hours of doing prep. And
so how long it would take?
Oh yeah, like you still wouldn't get it done in time.
Wow.
Like you'd still have bits to do after lunch service, ready for dinner service and stuff, but like it was all about organising. Obviously, I'd come from an environment where if they didn't have something, they'd be like, oh no, we've run out. Like, and that was it. Whereas working in there, it was actually, you don't run out, you make enough and surplus in case that's what people want.
Yeah, unless it's, when there's a demand.
Yeah. Exactly. So
how do you function? How do you keep going for 20 hours a day? Like that's a lot of. This is a bit of a loaded question because we spoke about this.
Like, honestly, drugs.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, and as we spoke about earlier, like it's not forced upon you. Like, do you know what I mean? It is an active, avid choice for you to partake in drugs and things like that. And do you know what? It was offered to me, and I was like, do you know what? I'll try it. Like, I've never tried it before. Thought, why not? Everyone else was doing it.
Because apparently this is like really rife in the kind of like food and hospitality industry.
Anyone that tells you it isn't is probably lying.
Or doing it themselves.
Yeah, or do you know what I mean? And it's just like, there's no point to lie about it. Like, it happens. Do you know what I mean? It's one of the things that happens in the industry. Not everyone does it. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's many chefs I know that have never even touched it and never would. But everyone finds their own sort of mechanisms for it, and you know, staying awake and things like that. And when I was in London, I thought, it's normal, like it's a done thing. Like it kept me awake to be able to do service.
20 hours, mate.
Like I never did it when we were like, you know, in service. It was never a thing like where people drink on service and stuff like that. That was never ever like even come into it. But you know, like before you get to work, sometimes like in the evening or in the afternoon, like just to pick you up ready for like doing 300 covers for dinner in the evening, like it
kept
happens.
you going, and I think in that environment it was a normality, so therefore you didn't.
It was
feel
almost
like
like for me, it was socially acceptable.
Yeah,
because a lot of people around me were doing it. As I said, not everyone was, but a lot of people were doing it, and it was very much like, okay, like, you know, it's you do it as, I don't want to say a necessity, but you did it because it worked for you. Do you know what I mean? And as I said, it was a choice. If I had the time to do it all over again, would I? Probably not. I'll be honest.
So short term, it obviously like benefited you.
Short term, it's a benefit because, you know, it gives you that buzz to keep you awake and, you know, and to keep going and do what you need to do. But it's
how did you deal with the long term effect?
I'll be honest. Like, you end up, as I said, you're not earning a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? And it's an extremely expensive hobby.
Yeah.
And as I said, like it's also very addictive. Like, you don't, at the time, you don't think it's an issue. Do you know what I mean? Because as I said, like, to you, it's socially acceptable. It's in that dynamic that you're in for work, and it's almost like, oh, okay, well, if everyone else is doing it, I'll do it. Do you know what I mean?
It's not an issue until it's an issue, essentially.
Exactly. And then like it wasn't until I really sort of moved restaurants and went and worked for a different group and worked for a different chef and things like that, you start thinking, actually, like, what am I doing in my life? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is not.
So why did you leave the other restaurant?
So basically, I'd been there a couple of years, and it was, you know, I'd worked through the positions I'd worked through. I'd been promoted a couple of times, and which is great. Again, I'd had fantastic opportunities. I'd won Chocolate Innovation Chef of the Year.
Amazing.
And it was a lot more opportunities then came and found me. And, you know, I basically got poached to go and work somewhere else. And he thought, you know, and I spoke to the chef at the time. I was very open and honest. I was like, look, I've been offered a job with another chef hero of mine. Like, I know you're friends with him. Like, I don't want there to be like any issues or any bad blood. But, you know, like, I'd really like to take the opportunity.
What do you say? Get the fuck out.
And do you know what? I was expecting him to. I was like, if you know, you like, if it don't work out, you can fuck off. You're never coming back here. But actually, he turned around and he said, "Do you know what, Tom?" He said, "I think it's the right time for you, and I wholeheartedly believe in you, and I'll support you. And if you ever want to come back, just pick up the phone."
Oh, that's brilliant.
And even to this day, I'm still friends with him. Yeah. Like, I still see him. We still speak to each other. And I think, and that was that. And I carried on working. I thought, you know, I don't actually want to be in London anymore. Like, I don't want to do these long days. I want something more. Like, I want to go on holiday. Do you know what I mean? I want to book an all-inclusive holiday. And like,
how old were you around this time?
So when I first moved out of London, I was just before I turned 20.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was. I'd given it
considerably.
I'd given it a good solid go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
So a good 3 years in that kind of environment.
I'd really tried, like, and it was full on. As I said, like we had a pastry chef that quit and left, and it was like a good 3-4 months where there was nobody like to cover that section, and it was just like, okay, like, the restaurant's open 6 days, someone needs to cover it, and I volunteered for it. Like, I was more than happy to do it, because for me it was what I loved doing. Do you know what I mean? It was my passion. The more I could do it, the better my prep speed got, the better my abilities were getting. Like, the more I increased my knowledge, the more like my own dishes were being considered by the chefs to look at, oh, you know, like, we can have like brainstorming sessions and we'd do like collaborative dishes, and you get to present stuff and things like that. And and for me, that was why I was doing it, because there was always that greater goal to progress to.
Would you have kind of said that you lost the love for that in London then, or?
I think London became very, very much the same. And I thought, you know, like, what if I try a different restaurant? And I went and tried a different restaurant, and it wasn't any different.
Same feeling.
I mean, now, don't get me wrong, like, for a chef going into the industry now at 16, 17 to go into London, like,
it's a big opportunity.
It's a massive opportunity, but it's very, very different.
Yeah.
Like, it's completely different to what it was when I started, and it's just very much like, you look at it and you're
better
like,
or worse.
It's better. It's so much better. Like, there's do you know what I mean? There's none of that, like, sort of shouting, bullying, if you like, and things like that. It's all very much like, it's more educational, like, because the hospitality industry at the minute's in a bit of the shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're short on staff left, right, and centre, and everyone's trying to fill positions and things like that. People have left and changed careers and everything, and it's a knock-on effect that's rolled on for the last sort of 4 years. And now everyone's like, well, actually, do you know what? We need to make more of an effort here. We need to make people feel more welcome. We need to make people feel like they want to be in the industry and they can come to us if they've got a problem. So it has changed a lot for the better. But as we discussed earlier, when I first left London, the only job I ever got sacked from was because, you know, it was well, I'd come out of London with that London mentality, let's say, and it was very much the way I'd been spoken to, the way I'd been treated. That for me, that was how a head chef or an exec chef should be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's
and that was what I took from it. Yeah, and it was, and as we said earlier, like, you know, you take the good and you ignore the bad, and trying to differentiate between those two dynamics sometimes is quite difficult, especially for the level of maturity that I had in such a position that I was going into. for me, I didn't know anything different.
And you were considerably young as well at that point as well.
And for me, it's almost like the naivety to actually think that actually I know what's right. I know how you should speak to people. I know how you should communicate and everything else.
Yeah.
But it was never. It was almost like it was a blurred vision of that's what needs to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And to be fair, it was probably quite a practical way of dealing with things in that period of time. Like you're talking a lot, at least around 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So like people were like that, and like even in the construction industry, very similar. So, and I think, as the world has changed, we have to kind of grow and change. But so you kind of had this old culture in a different environment, and how did that go down?
Yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't.
Yeah, it didn't work. I fell out with people that I'd become friends with because I was friends outside of work with them, and then in work I was a completely different person, and it was like waitresses and waiters wouldn't come into the kitchen to talk to you because they were too scared to be shouted at and stuff, and it's not nice. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't impress people. Like that's not the way you should treat people. That's not the way you should behave. And for me, it was a very short, steep, hard learning curve to get that phone call to say, we want you to come and pick your stuff up. We don't want you back.
Right.
And I think for that, it was a realization that, actually something here isn't going to work. Do you know what I mean? If I'm going to do this, something inside me needs to change, whether it's my, like the way I address situations, the way I look at things, do you know what I mean? How I process situations.
Bearing in mind, you just spent like the last 3 years being bullied and intimidated yourself.
Beasted, yeah. And it was one of them, and it's like, okay, so how do we now relearn this? And I actually ended up getting a job in London again, but I was commuting into London. And it was a little from Colchester, and it was a little bit different. And I thought, this is all right. This is different. Like it was still high end food, but it was very much a better work life balance. Like you would only ever doing 4.5 days a week, and
a walk in the park, if anything, compared to
and it was a real eye opener. And like the exec chef was just very, very placid. Like he didn't. Like never ever shouted. Like if something went wrong, he'd spend an hour with you teaching you so you'd learn how to fix it and not do it again. And I was like, hang on, like now I've seen something completely opposite to what like all of my experience up to this point has been. And that was a turning point for me. I was like, do you know what, actually this is I then he then paired me with someone to say like, look Tom, I want you to train this person that's just started. And I was like chef, I'm not a teacher. Like I don't like people not doing things my way. I don't like even when I don't do it my way. Do you know what I mean? Like, and if people don't move at the same pace as me, then they're slow and shit and shouldn't be doing the job. And it was still trying to break that sort of mentality.
So did you find like that old culture made you quite tough?
Yeah.
And then this kind of new culture that you've gone into, maybe like a bit more compassionate.
Yeah, it does. I almost had to relearn compassion and empathy towards people that were learning, because I then had to realise, actually, do you know what, Tom, you were that person.
Yeah, once. Yeah,
do you know what
exactly.
I mean? Like there was times where you didn't even know how to make a beurre blanc. So why are you shouting at someone for not knowing how to do it?
It's because that's how you were taught, right?
So and that was that. And I really struggled, and I said to him, I was like, chef, like, look, I really don't like doing this. I've done it for a couple of weeks. I was like, I've given it a go. Like, he was like, Tom, trust me. I was like, okay. And like when he said that, like he never used to shout at me, never used to shout at anyone. He was just, trust me, this is what I want you to do. I was like, okay, fine. And the enormity of respect I had for him and the way he was and the way he could not necessarily command respect, but just he earned instant respect because people were naturally drawn to him because of his demeanour, his way about who he was. And I was like, do you know what? If it works and he can do it so well for all of these people, like why can't I? And that was the turning point for me. And I sort of come in one day. I don't know why I woke up and it happened. And I was just very much, all right, like, you know, like it's happened. Don't worry about it. We'll just do it again. I'll show you how to do it.
It's quite interesting because when you're younger and like these situations happen, like normally you get a bit of anxiety and that's what causes like the getting angry and upset. But what he's kind of done is like loaded up your toolbox or giving you more like of a skill set.
Yeah.
So now you know how to deal with something rather than
1,000,000%.
like getting...
1,000,000%. And it wasn't so much I learned more about cooking and sort of things. So I still learned about different techniques and different sort of flavour profiles and dishes and stuff. But the biggest thing I took away from that was, actually, Tom, you don't need to be this big boisterous character, and you don't need to be the forefront that everybody knows because they're going to get shouted at if they do something wrong. Like, you thrive by being able to motivate other people. Like, being able to teach other people, spending the time to nurture a skill that you never had doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And for me, I was just like, okay, like let's give this a go. And then I went into like the world of private chefing, and that was a completely opposite end experience, because you know, like, most of the time you're in a house by yourself. If you've only got one principal to cook for, or two, there's normally you and like a servant or someone like a house manager, and that's it. Like,
what they do, hire you out for the day, the week?
So some hire you for a day, some hire you for a month, some hire you do like 3 months periods. I mean, we've got a contract now with an Indian billionaire who's actually become a personal friend, and I did a contract for him for 3 months, and it was the best 3 months I've ever spent. It was difficult, don't get me wrong. I mean, there was times I'd spend 15 hours doing prep for a party, and all his mates coming round, and then there'd be like a Chinese delivery driver would deliver Chinese takeaway to the back door of the kitchen. He'd come in and be like, "Oh, Tom, sorry, I forgot to tell you, I've ordered Chinese for everyone. Can you play it up?" And it would all. I'm just like, yeah, no problem. And you can't say anything else. And it's that lifestyle, and
you're getting paid, but also you wanna. Yeah. You're obviously passionate about your job as well.
Of course,
right?
And I mean, when you're putting a lot into it, like it's Michelin restaurant quality food in someone's house with obviously a lot less equipment, a lot less space, and you know, different ingredients and stuff, and it was, you know, there were days I go back and I just put my head in a pillow and scream.
Yeah, I hope he gave you a spring roll, mate. That's all I can say.
Well, you end up getting the leftovers, which is all right. It's not too bad, but. And then now, like, I've got guys that work for me that I'll recommend to go and do that 3 month same contract for him.
Brilliant.
And you know, like, you get first class flights, you get picked up by a Rolls Royce at the airport and driven to his house, and you get all your expenses covered and paid, and all your visas and stuff. Yeah. And then it's a different world. Like, it is a different world. But then that's at the level where you're paying for a premium. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're paying you because you're there on call, technically 24 hours a day if they want something to eat. That's why you're there. But then your salary of £480 a day and is sort of testament to that fact that actually that's why you're there, because some days you make an egg white omelette with a bit of chili and cheese in it, and then you'll do some chicken lollipops or drumsticks for lunch, and then for dinner he's going to get a takeaway or go out with his mates. Like, and it's.
So what will the chef generally be doing with the rest of the day? Just like chilling?
So they do a lot of prep. So, you know, like, you can, and the thing with being a private chef is you can have like complete free reign of like menu writing within limitations, obviously, to the client's preference of what they like and dislike, or if there's certain things they're allergic to or intolerant to. But yeah, you can just create whatever you want. You can really let those, like, that creative mind flow, and, you know, come up with different dishes, like test out skills that you think, you know, I'd really like to try this, but I've never had the opportunity to. But now you can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's things like that, and they don't always work. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, there's times where I'll do photo shoots and preps and things, and I think, yeah, you know, this is gonna be a brilliant dish, like, absolutely fucking amazing. And you put it all together, you think, the fuck am I thinking? Like, and you think, yeah, I'm throwing that plate away as well. Do you know what I mean? And that's how it goes. But you have that free reign to be able to do it, which is why a lot of people are drawn to that industry as well. Because if you're in with a client or you're in with a contract manager for private chefing, I mean, it can take you all over the world. Like, I've ticked off probably close to 60 countries now, all through. That's incredible. Mostly through work. I say all through, but mostly through work.
Where was the best place that you went to?
I love the Middle East.
Middle East.
Absolutely love the Middle East. I've lived in Dubai for a stint, lived in Qatar for a stint. I've done Kuwait, Lebanon.
What do you love about these sort of places?
It's just, I like Middle Eastern food, I like Middle Eastern cuisine, but I also really like the people. I just like the environment. I like being around.
Quite respectable.
It's very respectful. It's very, you know, and you see things in the news, and it just and it's like, yes, not every place is perfect, But at the same time, you're almost like, well, if you like it, it doesn't make a difference if someone else doesn't. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to go there. But like they might like somewhere that you don't like, and you aren't going to go there. Do you know what I mean?
But what you probably experienced hands-on was actually quite a delight.
My experience of it has been, and don't get me wrong, I've had some wonderful experience and some incredible opportunities. Do you know what I mean? But even the bits where you go out for the day in a buggy and you go over like the sand dunes and stuff, and
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. But then like there's also the scary side of what you do as well, where people don't realise that side. Like you can work for a principal, whether it's a client, corporate, or an individual, and it's like you're not allowed to walk through a door first because they have to check it in case someone tries to attack you because you're cooking for a president of a country.
Right? Is it that the security you're like?
Genuinely, it's. I mean, we used to drive around in armoured Range Rovers. I mean, when I say the doors were like that, like they were, like you could shoot a bullet next to it and it wouldn't go through the door.
So what sort of people were you cooking for? Like,
I've done billionaires, I've done royal families, I've done dignitaries, presidents, prime ministers. It's been. I've driven through some, some pretty scary places.
What's an example of it?
Went over the Syrian border.
Did you?
Yeah, that was one. Tripoli
as well.
Yeah, done a few bits. Kissed the edge of the Golden Triangle of Death. Do you know what I mean? And like running past Fallujah and stuff. And
fucking hell.
Yeah, you don't realise that actually. And for me, there's times not a lot scares me. Do you know what I mean? I'm a big old boy. Not a lot scares me. I've got tough skin, but there's some times where you can be in those places and
I think it's game over.
Yeah, I mean when they say to you, we're going from we're going from like the main residence to the farm, and you need to travel in the middle car, and then this car's got this and this car's got this, and like you're not allowed to get out of the car until someone opens the door for you, and it's like you get treated almost like royalty, like you're the principal. Do you know what I mean? But you're there because they protect you to that level because like you're a personal private chef to one of the most powerful people in the world.
And it was obviously quite a high risk places that you was travelling around anyway.
And
so
you get paid for it.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like it is that risk versus reward. Like if you want to earn very good money, like go and do a private contract for someone that's. I'm not saying like you have to go to that level and drive through like Syria and Tripoli and things like that. But like there's places that you go to that like people do try and attack people that are wealthy or have political connections and things like that, and they're things you have to be aware of. Like you can't work for a king or a member of a royal family from a country that's very, very outspoken and has a lot of pull in the world, and is also of maybe a religious minority that some people dislike, and then not expect there to be like there's some things you have to be more aware of than others. Like if you're cooking for a billionaire at Prince's Gate in London, it's very, very different to cooking for a prime minister in the middle of the sand. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's one of them ones where actually it teaches you a lot, like, and you get humbled very, very quickly into that world of actually there's a lot of benefit, but you have to sacrifice a lot. Do you know what I mean? This industry is not an industry to be in if you want to see every single one of your mates when it's their birthday. Yeah. If you want to be at every family occasion. Do you know what I mean? And I remember like going back to when I first moved to London, like my granddad, he was the one that had the fish and chip shop. Like he was amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like he'd teach me how to use a rumbler, like teach me how to use a chipping machine. Like, wouldn't let me go near the fryer until I was of a certain age and stuff. Always, he'd tell me off if I try and duck through and walk past the fryer and make me go the long way around. And he was a gentle giant, do you know what I mean? And he was part of the reason why I probably took food to another level where it was, just aside from cooking with mum, like we'd go down and see them when the restaurant was open and the fish and chip shop was open, and I'd be sitting there like poking my head underneath the little hatchway and stuff, trying to see what was going on.
So what happened? You haven't mentioned your dad's here at all. Like what happened?
So my biological father was, he has his own choices in life, is the way I look at it. He was there for a little bit, then he was in and out and stuff, and it was just never. I never fitted in with him.
Right.
Like, nothing I ever did was ever good enough.
You weren't quite convenient for his
Yeah.
lifestyle. So what was that? Granddad ended up playing a more father figure.
So Granddad was my stepdad's father.
Okay.
And my stepdad has been, he's been an absolute rock in my life. Do you know what I mean? He's been there since I was a tot. He's been there through thick and thin with like bits with my biological father where things have been, you know, difficult at times. I've been very, very angry at the world and and stuff at the root cause of that. And and it just, you know, it was, as I said, I was never good enough, and it's hard. I mean, even now, like it's emotional for me because it is difficult, and it's a place that I don't go to very often.
Would you say you've processed it, or would you? Or do you feel like
you know what? I'd like to say I've processed a lot of it. I think there's still bits. I think I'll never fully process it until I can have that honest conversation with him and say to him like what we're having here, and say, do you know what? Why was I not good enough for you?
Yeah.
I don't think that end result that's, you know, probably that we've probably touched on is ever going to get fully resolved. And it's a difficult one because it's like, I've been this far away from him walking down the street, and he'll cross over the road and ignore me. And you do you know what I mean? Wow. And that's as anybody, like, and I mean, as I said, like, I've got tough skin, like I can take it. But
you do seem like
even still, like that hurts. Do you know what I mean? And it's very much trying to fit in with life. And, you know, when I was growing up, like I was never really very honest. Like I struggled to tell the truth quite a lot. Always wanted to be accepted, and thought that, you know, by over exaggerating or you know, making up stories and telling porkies, like people would accept me more, and I'd get more friends, and people would enjoy like being with me and accept me for being different. Because, you know, if a parent can't accept you for who you are,
why would other people?
Why would anyone else? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It took me a long time to break that, and I think especially when I moved to London, people see straight through you. Like people look at you like a plain glass window.
I don't even think it's in London. I think it's I think people can get a sense of someone, whether they're just quite authentic or whether.
I think everyone can be a good judge of character. You can read people, but I think when I came to London, I think I realised it more. I think
more exposed.
It's probably the change of environment and circumstance where you become very, very almost vulnerable to a way where actually like people do see through you. Like people look at you and like they can tell straight away if you're full of shit or not.
So how did you kind of transcend into that authentic person?
To be honest, it was the fact that like people
the pendulum swung, didn't it? You went the other way, if anything.
And people were just very much like, you know, like it was an old boy that I spoke to once, and he'd been in one of the restaurants I was working at. Do you know what I mean? And he'd been through it all. Do you know what I mean? He'd seen it all. He was like an ex-serviceman, was a chef in the army, did like the sort of foot soldier regime as well, then moved into doing chefing and stuff, and then came out of the army, and, you know, he was in his 60s and still like doing undercover services in pastry by himself. The nicest people you'll ever meet. And he come up to me one day and he was like, Tom, look, I want to have a chat with you. I was like, all right. And he was like, look, I like you as a person. Like, I think you've got a lot to offer. You bring a lot to the table, and I think you're genuinely a good person. But he was like, you're full of shit.
Told you straight
and
out,
just
right?
Straight to the point. Yeah. Like, straight, just cut through. Like, do you know what I mean? There was no fluffing it up.
And did that flip of a switch?
And I was a bit like, at first, I was like, what are you on about? Do you know what I mean? Like, nah. And he was like, honestly, he was like, you're full of shit. He's like, I love you. Like, and do you know, like, I've seen the stuff that you've done. I've seen your capabilities, but you don't need to try and impress everyone. Like, what you do and the ability of what you, like, your skill set, what you've been through in life, like how you bring it to the table and how you've manifested it into what you're trying to do now, you don't need to, like,
impress anyone.
You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Like, people are impressed by you naturally at the fact that you had your first head chef position at 18. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are impressed by the fact that you've won international competitions. People are impressed by the fact that you give up your time to train students in colleges where you started. Like, people don't need you to try and
pretend to be something you're not.
Be the good person. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was the turning point, because I was like, what am I doing? Do you know what I mean? I don't need to waste my time on this. Like, I could put so much more of my time to good use to actually achieving something, like, and achieving a goal. And, you know, like, I always wanted to have a flashy car. I always wanted to, you know, like, go out and spend money and be like the biggest personality that you could find in the room. And, you know, it's detrimental. Like, I put myself in like 60 grand of debt, like, and for what? Just to show off to people that all along could probably see straight through me but tolerate me because they like me on a friendship level.
Yeah, yeah. So what, you were just trying to you like spend
like,
loads of money on
do you know what I
people,
mean? Like,
on materialistic
going out,
things.
like, oh, you know, I'd always be the first to buy drinks for everyone. Like,
Yeah.
oh, come on, let's go out. We'll go out for food, and it's just like, do you know, you don't need to do that. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. It doesn't matter how many commas and noughts are in your bank account. Like, if you're a horrible person, or like you're doing it from a place of fakeness, like, what do you actually stand for? Like, where's your moral compass and where's your alignment?
The other thing as well is like spending all of that money on people. Once you've stopped doing that, you'll find out who your true friends are
100%.
anyway. They'll all stick around while you got money and like things are
honestly,
going good.
1,000,000%.
As soon as like you start hitting a dark place, it's like you look around and they're already
Absolutely
onto
gone.
someone else.
Yeah, absolutely gone.
So was that like a moment where you did hit rock bottom?
100%.
Is that what happened?
I was rock bottom. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's one of my mates. He's literally my best mate, and we've been friends 25 years, 26 years this year. Like, and he's been there through thick and thin. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the good, the bad, and like even through all the bullshit that I used to come out with. Like, he called me out on it. He tolerated me because he, like, do you know what I mean? And that's why we're still friends today. And it's like you look at these things. It's like they're the people that you value. They're the people that you want to be around.
Yeah.
And for me, being at rock bottom, like, I turned around and he was there. Do you know what I mean? Like, my mum was there. Like, my stepdad was there. Like, those, like, people in the industry that I'd stayed friends with were there. Do you know what I mean? But people that had hung around for like the last 5 years, like, just latching on like leeches, like, boom, gone. Like smoking all night. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it made me realise that actually, why am I trying to be something I'm not? Do you know what I mean? Like, be the person and be true to yourself. Like, you don't need to impress anyone. If people don't like you, they don't have to hang around with you.
Yeah, that's it.
Like legit, people don't need to be there to see what you can pretend to give them. Like, turn up and be yourself. And if people don't accept you for you turning up and being yourself, like you said, fuck them. They don't deserve your time or attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you're turning up and being true to who you are and who, like, what you believe in, like your own moral compass, and they can't accept you for that, or they want you to try and, like, you know, diminish that candle or that flicker of what you're doing, that you're in the wrong group of people.
Yeah, you're 100%. Yeah, because I've felt like this before in the past, where you surround yourself in the wrong environment and people will devalue you, and therefore, you know, you're wasting your time and energy there. But you go to another environment and people are like, this guy's amazing, like, and that's where you thrive and prosper. And so you got to be really careful of the environments that you surround yourself in. That was a big lesson for me as I kind of grew.
Yeah, and I think that's where me and you are quite, like, we get on quite well already. Do you know what I mean? Because we understand that we're on a level of, like, actually where we are in life stage and what we've been through. And I think it's, like, as I said, like, I turned around one day and said, you know what, I don't want to be stuck in this rut anymore. Like, I don't want to be at rock bottom. I don't want to be, you know, like, paycheck to paycheck, like, trying to scrounge and borrow money from things, like putting money on credit cards just to enjoy life. Like, that's not what I want to do. I want that freedom to say, actually, I want to do something that not only gives me freedom, but inspires through my actions other people around me to say, actually, do you know what, like, hang on, like, this guy's fucking made it. Like, he's chasing his own dream. He works for himself. He doesn't work for someone else. Like, he's built a company that people are working for. Like, he's got employees. He's blessing their pockets with, like, people that have blessed his pockets from contracts and from works he's done to be able to get a mortgage, to be able to buy a house, to be able to put food on the table for their family. Like, and for me, it was so much more of, like, that alpha realization that actually I can do so much more with my time than what I have been doing. And being at that rock bottom, and it's that age-old saying that, like, rock bottom will teach you more than mountaintops ever will. And for me, like, that hit me like a train, because I was like, do you know what? I've seen rock bottom, And I'm not saying I'm now at the top of a mountain, but like I'm going in a direction where I'm comfortable in my own choices in life. I'm comfortable with the decisions that I'm making. I'm comfortable with being where I want to be and being true to who I am. And you know, like when you get to the top, there's always another peak to you know, like you get to a false summit, and like there's always that next peak to go to, like that next step.
Climb, yeah.
And if I can inspire people to say, actually, do you know what, guys, like just always be true to yourself. For me, that has so much more value to it than a paycheck at the end of the day and going out on a Friday night with mates.
I mean, like the one thing I've kind of gathered from yourself is you're really very passionate about what you do, and therefore, like because that passion's there, it's like your purpose is to climb that mountain, to then climb that mountain, and I think like that's probably like the best driver, whether it's, you know, your passion for the industry you're in or your family or for whatever it is to know you have a passion there that keeps you driven.
Yeah.
Like it will always allow you to grow and prosper.
Yeah,
and,
like a 1,000,000%. And for me, the goal is the goal was never to build a business like to the level that we're at now. Do you know what I mean? It was never about creating like projects for people and them becoming successful franchises, and like it was never about that. It was always about like developing, like whether it's a concept, whether it's something that we're doing ourselves, whether it's even just a recipe for like we do some like out with some guys in California that have a wine vineyard, and they send out a wine magazine every quarter, and we design recipes using their wines, and they're like match with like their products that are coming out in those bins and stuff like that. And it's like all of that stuff for me is just like, it ignites it in me. Like it's so much fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I've got a very addictive personality. Like I'm very addictive, like in traits of what I want to do. And I think for me, instead of being like, you know, like taking drugs or drinking or like just wasting time being stuck and not progressing forward, I've managed to almost re-educate my own mindset to say, okay, like capitalize on what your traits are. Capitalize on your personality and put it to good use. Like I can push myself to limits that most people wouldn't even dream of, because I believe in making sure we're getting there and achieving what we can achieve. If I have to do 3 days of like non-stop work to complete something, I'm happy to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Because it's for the great, it's like exactly, the bigger picture,
like
greater
it's the
good.
vision of what we want to do. And like the company now, I mean, we reach like 28 different countries. Do you know what I mean? Like incredible. We do events around the world for some of the biggest, like, and some of like the most biggest household names like Meta, Pinterest, Google, Spotify. Like we do stuff like across the globe, things like Formula One, things like BP. Like you see a BP garage everywhere. Like there's still an office of people that do stuff, and there's still links that we have in doing like corporate bits and stuff like that. Like I've had the experience to do like stuff at BAFTA House and like work on PlayStation game launches and stuff like that. Like I've done bits with Microsoft, and it's just like,
because you were telling me about the Meta contract that
so like we did Cannes Lions Tech Festival. So we did a gala council dinner for like all the big shots of Meta and all the, like, imagine every big every big tech company in the world, their CEO or like their MD came to this council dinner. And it was like a real immersive dining experience. And like, instead of having bread and butter for the first course, the room was filled with like sourdough and butter flavored fog, like that people walk into. And like we did a glow in the dark course where all these UV lights pop up, and like all the food, they pour the sauce out of the jug, and then all of this like different colored like purees and sauces. And it's like creating the balance so that everyone flowed together without losing like that little bit that was needed of the experience.
Yeah,
but they all glow in the dark at different colours and stuff, and it was like a dry ice like whiskey aroma that come out of like a rose garden dessert, and they'd like custom made this filter on Instagram where you put your phone up to it and it basically gave you the vessel that the dessert was served in, and it literally had like bugs and like ivy and stuff and birds flying out of this like this filter based on the dessert that we'd created and stuff, like to be like a replicate of like the forest floor. And
because this is like what Meta does, doesn't it, where it's like they've got these, they're creating these apps, or I don't know if they've actually bought them out now, but you can buy like accessories for yourself.
Yeah.
So like I can look at you and you can have like devil horns or
Yeah.
like angel wings.
It's literally something like that, and they design it bespoke just for this one dinner, and like, and when like, so companies like Meta, again as that example, they use buzzwords like redefined, like, and if they classify something as redefined, I mean, like, for them as an internal word usage or word association, like, it's above everything else. Like, it's gone above and beyond. And every email that come back, like, to the clients that we were working on behalf of, like, doing this dinner, they were like, it's redefined. Like, it's redefined what we thought about food and how you could, like, interact and have an immersive dining experience. And it's like,
from Meta as
like,
well.
when a company like that is saying something about a menu that you've written and tried and tested over, of like how you're going to build something, and like, it's not just a single, like, in no way is it just me. Do you know what I mean? Like, the team that I have around me, the team that I work with from different companies under contracts, or even the people that work for me as well, like, for me, it's about, we're collectively creating something here that has got so much traction and trajectory to go in the right direction, to be something like remarkably, like, that builds a legacy to leave behind. And for me now, it's about developing that legacy that actually says to people, do you know what, go and like apply for that job, whether it's food, whether it's hospitality, whatever it may be. Like, it doesn't have to be anything to do with what I do, but it's about just inspiring people enough to say, take the chance on yourself and believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to believe in you.
Yeah, 100%.
Nobody's going to be willing to take a chance on someone that doesn't have the confidence in their own abilities. And that's where we're now at, where we want to say, do you know what, like, the idea with us and what we do is about developing our standard and developing our practice and our profession of what we love and our passion, and showcasing it to the world through the works that we can, like with food and with events and stuff like that. And so many people don't, like, they miss that, so like that societal dynamic we live in, that, you know, something that you see on Instagram is as it is in the world. Like,
I think one of the issues that a lot of people have in this era as well is people don't want to put the graft in anymore compared
100%.
to what it was like before.
100%.
And I know it weren't a nice environment for you, and it, you know, I experienced it as well. But that kind of tough environment made you far more resilient.
100%
in life.
Yeah.
And I think what it is now you're stronger for the big wide world.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, some people don't want the hassle, they don't want the grief. It's like,
yeah,
we've created these kind of like softer times for people.
Yeah.
And it's like, so as soon as they go around a corner of a bend where it's quite tough, it's like, oh, nah, I'll go the other direction. Like, because you were telling me about the panel that you was on.
Yeah.
And you had like over 400 people.
Yeah, so the panel was on like future trends, like things that are coming up in the market of like the food, beverage, restaurant, hotel, like catering industry. And on this panel, there was this lady. She's really cool. Like, she's an Eastern European lady. She's capitalized on like things that she had in her childhood, like fermented products and you know, like vegetables and things and preserves and stuff like that. And this other lady that's created a kombucha drinks brand that's like, you know, taking the market by storm and like really putting her stamp on it. And we sat there and we start asking these questions, and there's like 350 people sitting in front of you when you sit down, and you know, this is going to be good. And like, I've done a couple of panel shows before, like I know the crack. Do you know what I mean? And these two ladies didn't. And it was, you know, like by the end of the 30-40 minute talk, there was only 30-40 people left in out of those 300 that are still sitting there. And it's like, okay. And they're like, oh, you know, have we done something wrong? Have we done this? And I said to both, I was like, guys, like, this happens. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, the societal understanding is that if you can have an easier way to do something or achieve something, like, they want everything handed to them.
They just want the easy answer.
Like, they wanted to turn up to that panel and sit there for 10 minutes, and within 10 minutes have a notepad full of ideas that's going to cost them less than 100 quid, and they're going to make $1 million of it by the end of the year. And I was like, it doesn't work like that. But And as we were saying earlier, like there's this one guy that sat there for the entire thing, and he hung around at the end when the panel finished, and he said, Thomas, can I borrow you a second? I said, yeah, of course. And we sat there and chatting, and now he's a full-time client of mine, and like he started his own business, and I give him like some tips and tricks and some coaching stuff, and help him out with like business and setting things up. And it's, for me, those are the people that you value, because even out of those 300 people, even if one of them becomes a client, you've inspired one person to do something differently based on your experience.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need 350 people to turn around and say, do you know what, Tom, you've done really well. I want one person to come up to me and say, can you help me do what you've done? And for me, that's so much more rewarding than having all those people clap and cheer and stand up and say, oh, you've done really well and you've done great. Like, and it's some people say it's arrogance in a way, and some people say, it's a bit of a cavalier attitude to have. But it's like, if I want to see how well I've done, I type my name into Google.
Right, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I look at industry magazines. Like, I look at people that are in the industry that share stories.
You have to remind yourself.
Yeah, of course you do.
Because people like us, you're probably quite hard on yourself.
Oh, I'm the world's worst critic. Do you know what I mean? Just the same as you probably are to yourself
100%.
as well. And it's like, that's great, but I don't need that from people sitting in front of me. I want them to value like what we're talking about rather than the why we're talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Because the why we're talking about it to them is because they want a quick fix to make them a millionaire at the end of the year. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
No.
Like, it's nowhere near. Do you know what I mean? That's not how it works. As you know, like with your own business and things, like it doesn't work like that. Like, you have to put the graft in. And as you said, so many people now are just, they want it given to them. They want the opportunity. Well, I've been to college for 3 years and I've got an accounting qualification. Like, I want to be your CFO. It's like, well, I don't need you to be. Like, I don't want you to be. Like, you've got a bad attitude. Like, yes, you've been to college, but what do you know about our business? What do you know about our accounting practices? What do you know about how we deal with international payments?
I think kind of like experience wins every step of the way compared to like you can have 100 qualifications and no experience at all. Yeah. But kind of have this expectation in life where
it is a tough borderline, do you know what I mean? Because people need to understand sort of like the parameters of the foundations, if you like, of whether it be like going back to cooking, whether it be like how to use a knife or like how to sharpen a knife or basic vegetable cuts and things like that. Like, yes, you need to learn those things, but coming from college and thinking that you've done 3 years at college and because you're the big fish in the pond at college doesn't mean you automatically become the big fish in a restaurant.
No, that's right.
Like, out in the industry, like you need to walk in there and be a sponge, is what I say to everybody. Absorb everything around you
and prove to people.
Yeah,
like show them how good you are.
100%.
Like, don't just talk the talk, walk it as well.
Let what your capabilities do showcase what you can deliver for them.
Yeah.
And so many people just get it wrong. Like, they come out of college, and we've had a couple where like they're like, oh, why I want to be called chef, and they're like 17 years old, and like why doesn't anyone call me chef? And I'm like, because for a chef to call you chef is a term of like almost endearment, but also it's a sign of respect. Actually, like when you're in a kitchen and someone says like, chef, I need to borrow this, and like they're addressing you as chef when they're talking to you, like that's a level of respect that you can't teach.
You like, got to earn that.
That's something that's earned, and it's like a bit of a chefy term, but it's like to be forged in the fire means that like you're doing a Saturday service in a kitchen team that you've never worked with before, and you're ensuring that your abilities are up to the standard to be able to make sure you're there to support them, make sure you're not stitching them up on service, make sure like you're there to deliver what you're there to deliver on.
I think one issue for a lot of us in this day and age is we want everything now.
Yeah.
We've become so impatient because life has actually got easier because we can get whatever we want when we want it. Yeah. So somebody that just comes into the kitchen all of a sudden wants to be top dog, and it's like things take years and years and years like to progress, and I think we're kind of like struggling to understand that. Even this podcast, you sometimes want high results in a short period of time. Yeah. And it's like you have to keep reminding yourself. Like I just spent 17 years in my industry before I created a business that's now a multi-million pound business.
Yeah.
Like 17 years of my
of graft,
which is half of my whole lifetime
Yeah.
existence. So like, you know, it could be another 17 years before this podcast takes off.
But it's and that's the thing though. It's like you've put that graft in, and you understand what it means to actually be there and build something. And it's so difficult because you can't teach that. People have to, like, you can give them all the tools, you can give them all the motivation, you can give them all the pep talks and everything you can think of. But if they don't want to learn or they don't want to comprehend it, like, they're never going to quantify that actually you've spent 17 years building a multi-million pound business on your experience. Like, they just think, oh, actually, like, you've got a multi-million pound business and you've got a nice car, or do you know what I mean? Like, and that's it. Nobody sees now, and it's one of the most frustrating things for me is that in the society that we live in, and the dynamic from social media and the detachment from reality, that people don't understand the value of hard work anymore.
Nah. Like, nobody wants to do hard. Nobody likes hard work.
Everyone thinks, oh, you know, like, I can sit there and do YouTube automation and become a millionaire in a year. I'm like, yeah, great. But what do you actually get out of that? Where's your satisfaction from that?
Where's your character building? What do you actually learn or gain from that? Because I heard someone, I can't remember who it was, but it's like, if you have too much of an easy process, you don't really learn anything.
Yeah.
Through like adversity, challenges, difficulties, that's where you really learn and grow.
Of course you do.
Like, not when it's like life is too easy. So it's almost like that saying about don't pray for an easy life, pray to be strong enough to enjoy a hard one, or something along them lines.
And it is like that. And I just think, I look at, and it's one of the it's a very old quote saying, and you know, so many people have said it and use it, but for me it's the story of the cows and the buffalo, right? And it's that when there's a rainstorm coming, all right, cows and buffaloes can both sense that there's a rainstorm coming, right? And it's the cow will turn and run away from the rainstorm, okay, and then, you know, they'll stop, and then the rainstorm will catch up to them, and then they'll run again. A buffalo will run straight at the rainstorm, because, like, by running head on to the challenges and the adversity that you face, there's only so much in front of you that's going to stop you. Do you know what I mean? There's only so much when that rainstorm hits in your life that it's going to be there for. Like, you have to push through it in your own way. But turning and running, like, to then have it catch up with you, whether it's a month, whether it's 6 months, a year down the line, you're always going to be going through that same process and breaking that cycle. So, like, when you're faced with adversity, like, just be the buffalo.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, run head on to it. Like, and I'm not saying you're going to break through, like, this imaginary, like, metaphorical brick wall and everything's going to be perfectly sunshine and rainbows the other side, because it isn't. That's not how life works. But by running at it head on, you're already getting rid of half of the battle you're about to face.
You're becoming stronger for the next challenge.
You are. Yeah, like, you're building yourself up and your own resilience to say, actually, like, why am I scared of this? Whether it's an opportunity, a job interview, like, whatever it may be that you're sort of, like, nervous about or anxious about, just go at it head on. Trust in your abilities, believe in your own confidence, and value yourself to say that, actually, I am good enough to be here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to let this little rainstorm stop me from what I want to achieve. Yeah. And I think so many people don't understand the concept of, actually, you can run at something head on and it work, and it might save you a week, it might save you a year of work. Do you know what I mean? But running around it only wastes your time.
I think procrastination is also a bit of a problem you got to be careful about, because you can almost sit there trying to work things out for so long that you end up not doing anything. Yeah. So running at these things head on and just, and you know what, make a mistake or two. Just at least you're doing something.
You've got to fail.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. Like, I started my first business, and it failed. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were making money. I was spending money quicker than we were making money. Do you know what I mean? And you have no choice but, you know, to close the company. And it's like, okay, I've put a lot of work and effort into this. I've failed. Like, I could have given up and I could have gone back to a 9-to-5 job or a standard 4-day kitchen job. Like, do you know what I mean? But I thought, no, actually, like, how do I learn from this and turn it into a resourceful experience rather than a loss?
Yeah, I understand that.
And then that's how the new business was then bought and and built to be, actually, do you know what, this is how we're going to do things this time. Like, we're going to do it properly. We're not going to run before we can walk. We're going to take things as they come. Do you know what I mean? And you build on it. Like, it takes time, as you can well attest to. Like, it's not something that happens overnight.
No, I think what people struggle to understand is that success is built on piles and piles of failures. And if you've got that ability to endure or persevere, then there's no doubt you won't be successful, but you have to keep rolling with the punches all the time. You've got to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. You have to be able to say, do you know what, like, and it's like success. Someone said to me once that, you know, success is another person that tried one more time. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter how many times you fail at something. Like, the point is to never give up. And like, if you believe in something like that strongly, that you wanna make it your reality, then you'll find a way. Do you know what I mean? But for me, giving up's not an option.
Yeah, no, I love that. I absolutely love that. So before we wrap up, right, I want to get a little bit controversial here. But
oh dear, here we go.
So what's your thoughts on vegan food?
Okay, now, in all honesty, like, there's some very, very good vegan restaurants out there. Like, there's some very, very talented chefs that are cooking vegan food that, you know, like, it is good, and you can use it in different ways. I personally don't like vegan food, okay, and I think a lot of it is.
And that's saying it in the nicest way possible.
It's more that, like, for me, like, veganism or however people want to class themselves as a vegan, like, it's, some people do it for choice, some people do it for preference. Like, I get it, do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I also see it from the restaurant point of view, because there's a few restaurants recently that are friends of mine that are like, look, vegans aren't welcome here anymore. Like, and it's
why is
so
that?
Because, like, people don't realize that to make something vegan is extremely expensive.
Okay.
Like, because if the equivalency in a price of a milk replacement as opposed to actual milk is somewhere anywhere between £1 to £2 difference.
Oh, right, okay.
And then if you've got something like a dessert, for example, like something that we're trying to work on for a new project, like as a vegan dessert option, like, the price of vegan chocolate is double what a normal chocolate bar will cost you per kilo.
So what's the problem with just charging that?
Because people don't want to pay it.
They don't want to pay it.
Because if, like, say for example, if you were a vegan, right, and you went into a vegan restaurant and they had a set menu that was, you know, 3 courses, a starter, a main, and a dessert, and that was your set menu. That set menu for a standard set menu is £27. Okay, just hypothetically as an example. That vegan menu is £35.50.
Right, okay, so yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Bit of a gap
so
there.
there's a big gap, and it's not that people are charging it because it's the inconvenience to make it. It's the actual skill set and the ingredients that you have to be able to have, like, the knowledge of different vegan products in the market, like different chefs and different skill levels.
It's a whole other realm.
It's a complete, like there's now vegan cooking classes that, like, you can do at colleges and universities just to be able to specialise in vegan cuisine.
Do you think it's a generational thing as well? Do you
Massively,
think
100%.
Yeah, like that we're
I think in 10 years there's not going to be vegans.
Oh, is it?
Generally.
Oh, really?
No offence, sorry.
Really? Like, no, I meant from a generational point of view. I meant like these chefs that don't quite take to veganism. Do you think it's because of an old school mentality?
Yeah, I think in that respect, I think yes, it is. I think there is some chefs that sort of are very stuck in their ways. Like, well, actually, you know, I've been cooking 30 years, and in 30 years, or in the last 5 years, in the last year, I've had more vegans come into my restaurant than the last 30 years.
Yeah,
do you see what I mean?
Exactly.
So, like, I can understand that, and I also think it's a generational point of view from people who are vegans in some respects. Like, if it's a cultural thing or a religious thing or like a dietary requirement for an intolerance or an allergy, absolutely, I completely get it, because that's always been there. But I think people that are like, some people jump on the bandwagon to say that they're a vegan because they want to associate with something. Right. And I think, and I'm not saying it's to every person that's a vegan or says that they're a vegan, and it is probably very controversial, and I'll probably get a load of messages on Instagram and stuff.
It's your view anyway.
But it's for me, I think if you look at something and say, like, there's nothing wrong if people have a preference and want to be vegan, But for me, as a business person or as a business owner in hospitality that has ties into restaurants and into food trucks and kiosks and like with a catering company and stuff like that, if you're a vegan, you also need to educate yourself a little bit on actually why is something more expensive just because it's vegan. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the turning point that people are like, well, no, I'm a vegan, so you should cater for me. It's like, okay, that's fine. We're happy to cater for vegans, but there's a price difference because of the products we have to buy. Like an egg replacement or like a setting agent that's like some setting agents we buy, like for some of our vegan stuff or like our thickening products and things like that like if we do a dish that's a lemon posset or a baked lemon cream, and it's not actually baked. A lemon posset is just a set cream. So it's basically boiled, it's got lemon juice and sugar in it, and you boil it to a point where the coagulation of the cream occurs because of the acidity and the temperature. You pour it into something and it sets. If you remove that fat and dairy element from that cream, it's not going to set. So we then need to have an additive or like a plant-based alternative that allows for that product to set so that we can still cater for vegans and offer. So we don't want people to feel left out. Do you know what I mean? We want people to come and dine with us and experience it and say, you know, their vegan food, they really accommodated for us and it was similar to what they had on the menu, but obviously it was vegan friendly. But in order for us to do that setting agent, for example, that I use with the set lemon cream, for us to put that as a vegan product, it's adding nearly 12p of cost of ingredients into something that only cost me 50p to make it if it's a normal product.
Am I right in thinking if you've got so say you've got 100 customers, mm-hmm. and then 20 of them are vegans,
yeah,
the rest just normal meat eaters, and you're catering for the vegans, I've got to try and put this into words, but essentially, like, you need enough customers to support a vegan menu.
To have a completely vegan menu or like to be able to prepare a vegan menu to run alongside a standard menu in a restaurant, even if it's like our restaurant down in Brighton, City, like that 40-cover little Italian bistro that we've had some business with, like, even if it's something like that, I'd need 25%
minimum
of my daily trade
to be vegans.
To be vegan.
For it to be a fair price.
For me to be able to make that a fair price for them.
Yeah.
For me to be able to match those two menus in price, I need to be able to have that demand to be there. And at the minute, that demand isn't there.
And what sort of percentage do you think that is?
What it is at the minute?
Yeah.
At the minute, it's probably 4 or 5%. It's single figures.
Oh, so yeah, it's still quite small.
And it's a long way off. Like, to be able to bring that price gap in, it's difficult. And a lot of vegans like then take to, you know, TripAdvisor and stuff. And again, I'm not saying it's all of them, but like some of them will take to TripAdvisor, they'll take to Google reviews and things like that. And if you go on Google review, right, if you've got, like, say you've got 50 reviews, right, and every single one of them's 5 stars, yeah?
All the 1 stars are the vegans.
One person, like, yeah, literally, one person can go on to your page and leave a review on Google for your business. And if that person puts anything less than a 5-star, you'll automatically lose one of your 5-star ratings. So right, you'll, as a business collectively, it doesn't matter that you've got 50 5-star reviews. One person going into your restaurant that leaves a 4 or 3-star review, even if it's a 1-star review, like anything less than that will automatically remove you as a 5-star business.
Right.
And I think the detrimental effect that has on something, because a lot of people go by reviews. And if your last 3 reviews on the first page when you come up on TripAdvisor or whatever it is that, you know, like the vegan food was really expensive and like wasn't really to our taste, it automatically people are going to bypass your restaurant.
Yeah. So I can see the kind of complexity in all of this.
There's a lot of moving parts to it. Yeah. And as I said, like I cook for vegans. I don't personally like vegan food. Like I've eaten some nice vegan dishes. Would I choose to be a vegan? No. Do I believe in buying seasonal food? Yes, absolutely. Do I believe in buying a mixture of food, like buying fish when it's in the right season, buying meat like throughout the year at different times? Like turkey's available in this country 12 months of the year, but yet the peak of turkey sales is the last week of November to the week before Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, but turkey's available all year round, but 80% of British people won't buy turkey when they go to the supermarket for a weekly shop. And it's things like that. So I am conscious about what I buy and when I buy it. And there's times if I fancy something, I'm going to go and buy it. Do you know what I mean? And there's also bits where you see things in supermarkets as well that aren't in season, like strawberries aren't in season in December. I don't care what anyone tells you. You can't buy a proper English strawberry in the peak of December or January because they're imported by supermarkets. If you go to a little farm shop, you might get some that are, hydroponically grown in tunnels or in like certain like grow walls and things like that. But a lot of food's imported. And it's like, well, okay, that's great. But if you're looking at veganism for, again, as that example, and I don't want to cuss vegans out too much here or anything, but like, if you're looking at that vegan product, are you looking at all the air miles it's taken to get there? Because if you're buying leeks and they're coming in from Israel, and you're buying carrots that are coming from Peru, and your avocado that you love on your toast as like an alternative, and your watermelons that you like as your fish and steak alternatives and stuff in like things like Yo Sushi and places like that are doing these alternatives, which is great. But if you then look at the air miles that watermelons come from Africa. Yeah, like those avocados have come from Mexico.
Did nothing change with Brexit, like with all of that? Or
well, this is why the price of everything's gone up as well, because a lot of stuff is imported, and a lot of stuff, like, if you look at a farmer or a grower or someone that provides like shipment from, say, Africa for bananas or for watermelons or for carrots that are grown, anything like that, like the micro veg that's grown in Kenya that everyone loves and raves about, if they're sending 10 40-foot containers into Europe, why are they going to send 2 to the UK? Do you know what I mean? And then it's like that added cost then goes onto it as well. That actually it's got to then come from Europe into the UK.
Right, yeah.
And that's why a lot of stuff in supermarkets is going up still, because like market value isn't there. And then farmers in the UK want a fair price for their product, as everyone does. Then they're not getting it from the supermarket, so the supermarkets are then again outsourcing it to then import it. Because if everything was bought British, your supermarket shop would go from £50 to £300.
Yeah, that's
which is a massive difference. And obviously, supermarkets know the current like climate that we find ourselves in. It's not feasible.
Yeah, the cost of living is.
Of course, it is.
It's difficult.
It's one of them ones. But yeah, that's why. That's my opinion on vegans. I mean, I'd like them to just understand, not all of them, like the ones that don't get why things are more expensive, like, because it's not hard to find out. Like if you go onto like any shopping site online and like Amazon, or even when people do their weekly shop online,
you'll see a difference.
And it's, if you look at a plant-based double cream compared to a standard double cream, like you're talking about £1 difference for a pot. And then if you think about that on a mass scale, where like for us, like we buy double cream in between 2 to 6 litre like bottles or boxes, like that's a lot of money that's then being added. Right. If you're at a pound difference for a 250 gram pot, by the time you're at 6 kilo, you're at £25 difference. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely understand.
So, and that for me is like that crossover that a lot of people don't understand. Because to make stuff vegan and like with cream, and to try and do something that's still flavorful, creative, and still fits in with a brief of what you want from a chocolate pudding, say, it's a lot more expensive to buy that product than it is to buy a standard product.
Right, I hear you. So, thank you for the explanation.
There you go.
So Tom, we're going to finish up now, but what would be the last thing you'd want to say to everyone if you were to give your best bit of advice, your best message to people? Like, what would it be?
For me, the best thing that you guys can do is like believe in yourself and don't be afraid to take a chance. Like, give it your absolute all and don't ever doubt yourself through face of adversity. Believe in what you want to do and go for it, because the only person that's stopping you is you.
Love that. Thomas?
Pleasure. Thank you
Absolute
so
pleasure.
much, George Ravis.
Thank
It's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Off and on.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
No,
it.
appreciate you coming down today.
No, thank you very much.